presentation of the 2009 Thomas Jefferson Award, I'd like to call our chairman and the man who also held Thomas Jefferson's seat in the House of Delegates after Governor Allen, our chairman, Paul Harris.
Delighted to be here this evening in the capital of the Commonwealth and away from the nation's capital, where those who travel the high road of principled conservatism encounter very light traffic. It's been a while since I've heard George Allen speak, and I tell you, it's just refreshing and it stirs the soul. It inspires all of us. Now, as any good politician would say at this point in the program, everything that needs to be said has been said. Unfortunately for you, I haven't had my opportunity to say. So at this point, I'm going to ask Mrs. Allen to join me on stage. Delighted to see so many of you here this evening, and I want to thank you for joining us at Americans for Prosperity in defending the American values. And that's especially important in these days where we've had too many leaders in Virginia and in our nation's capital who believe that if you can dream it, we can tax it. And we need to get back to principled conservative leadership that believes and advances the ideals of smaller government. History can teach us some very interesting, fascinating lessons about leadership. President Reagan once reminded his staff as they were gathered in his office when he first was inaugurated, that if you ever feel like you're surrounded by alligators, just remember that we were sent here to drain the swamp. And that's a good lesson for our leaders to remember today. And we've had our share of great leaders in this Commonwealth. We've been blessed, extraordinarily blessed, with great leaders over the years. We've been blessed with the likes of George Washington and Patrick Henry and Thomas Jefferson and, yes, George Allen. And I'd like to think that part of his greatness had something to do with the fact that he started his political career in Albemarle County.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take the liberty of asking the Albemarle County folks to, and all of those who are in his original House district, to please stand, and I want to recognize Bessie Burkhead as the Dean of the Albemarle delegation. Please stand. Thank you very much. Tonight I have the distinct honor and pleasure of presenting the inaugural Thomas Jefferson Award for Small Government to the Commonwealth's 67th Governor, George Allen. "15 years ago at this time, Governor Allen had just started to make his mark as the newly sworn-in governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I could stand here and spend the next few minutes talking about his landmark achievements, his significant achievements, some of which you've heard about tonight. But I suspect that you already know them. I could stand here and talk about the significance of the man and his leadership, his zeal to change the lives of Virginians for the better. I could try to persuade you of his outsized significance in modern political history in this Commonwealth. But I suspect you don't need convincing. And I also suspect that the reach of George Allen's public service is yet to be known. Not to give away anyone's age, but 28 years ago I first learned of George Allen. At the time, I was a junior in high school in Charlottesville, and was living in Garrett Square, which is a public housing complex, literally on the other side of the tracks in Charlottesville. And my mother had gone to do some shopping on the downtown Charlottesville, and during her shopping, she encountered a young man who was glad-handing folks out in front of the Standards drugstore in Charlottesville. It was George Allen. He was running for the House of Delegates. And my mother returned back to our apartment, 409H in Garrett Square, with bags in both hands. And she was excited to tell me about her encounter. Her encounter with this young man who had such a sunny disposition, who asked about her children. And if there was ever a way you wanted to get on my mother's good side, all you had to do was ask about her children. But then you had to brace yourself for about 15 minutes of talking. And she described this young man and said how delightful that he was, and that she had told him that her oldest son, speaking of me, had dreams of going to college one day and had taken an early interest in politics. And I thought back over the years what would have attracted my mother to George Allen and what would have brought them together at that moment in time. And I think it may have something to do with the fact that he's such an affable and warm human being. He's a very personable human being. And my mother always encouraged her children to be positive, to have a positive outlook on life. But we didn't have much. She would always say, don't curse the darkness, light a candle. It was her way of saying, you may not be able to change fate, but you can change your attitude. And as fate would have it, 16 years from that time, in 1981, I was elected to the House of Delegates in the same seat once held by George Allen, and before him, Thomas Jefferson. I like to think that it's more than just fate, that it's somehow providence, that I could sum up this whole experience in one word: America. But only in America could a child born to a teenage mother, raised in public housing, have the opportunity to follow in the footsteps of Allen and Jefferson. And I've commented that we've been blessed over the years in Virginia to have extraordinary leaders. And I've suspected that over the years, George Allen has perhaps heard the echo of Thomas Jefferson ringing down through the corridors of time, saying, in matters of style, swim with the current. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. Throughout his brilliant career as a public servant, George Allen has never wavered from his common sense, conservative values. And on matters of principle, he has stood like a rock. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me as I present the inaugural Thomas Jefferson Award for Small Government to the Commonwealth's 67th Governor, the Honorable George Allen.